Herbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Herbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pro Physique Code. I am super excited about today because not only do I get to hang out on the code with you guys each week, but I'm also the director of the challenge. I know you've never heard me talk about that. It's not like I bring it up every episode, but I get to talk to Deidre today, and she won overall last year for women in the summer sculpt. And it's been so fun because I have tried to keep up with everybody on like Instagram and kind of see where people are at. And Deidre's just such an incredible example of somebody who has been able to make it so that it wasn't just a challenge where they threw all of their effort and then, kind of let things fall to the wayside, which we've seen. And so I kind of want to just give you the floor to, say hi, give us a little background about yourself, and, maybe just a little bit about like last year, and then we can kind of build from there.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I love Pro Physique. Pro Physique has been the journey that really has helped get me to the goals that I have been struggling with for years. Love the workouts, love the gym, love going to the gym, calling myself the gym rat, but just not really seeing the muscular physique that I wanted because I didn't understand macros. I really didn't understand it. So, and I don't know if everyone knows who's listening, but that was my third time entering the challenge. So that's the number one thing I really want to share with people. Don't be afraid to come back and again and again. You learn something every time, you meet great people, and it's just a great place to be. So yes, that was when I won, it was my third time entering, and I learned so much. And I felt like when I got a coach, and I don't want to seem like I'm pitching getting a coach that you have to get a coach because you
Right.
don't. But for me, when I hired a coach, which was Stephanie, I really learned more and I had someone helping to keep me accountable. That was the key for me because the first time I entered, I thought I did a great job. Second time, I sort of fell off and I didn't really have anyone keeping me accountable. So as I was trying to set a goal, life happened, things came up, and I didn't really have a reason that I had to keep pushing. I just said, oh, next time I'll just try it again. But by the third time, it was like, I'm really serious. I want to do this. I want to learn everything I need to learn. And that's when, it really made a difference for me where I really shed weight and I built the muscle and I understood nutrition. Stephanie helped teach me about the whole different macro breakdowns, the proteins, the carbs, the fat, and how it all plays a role. And tracking, really important too.
Right. So with that, when you were learning more about like the macros and stuff, what was like the most surprising thing that was like impactful for you?
The protein and the carbs. We tend to want to think that carbs are bad, you can't have carbs. And I have to also give Paul credit because I was watching Paul's YouTube videos
Right.
and he really explained about flexible dieting. And I know different coaches have different theories, stay away from junk, stay away from sugar, and I'm not knocking any of those methods. But for me, being someone who likes sweets, flexible dieting was something that resonated with me, where you could still have the foods that you love, but, at a certain amount, you don't go crazy and overboard, portion control, and just having like that 80-20. 80% of our foods are, the nutritional foods that we need, the proteins, the carbs, the complex carbs, and then, also still having sweets if that's what you like. If that's your vice, you can still have it. It's about moderation. So I think it was the protein, how important that is. Years and years and years ago, I think I did something where even with protein, it just seemed so high in calories. And there was a time when I was staying away from protein. So I was getting tests done, blood work, and my protein was so low. And that's because we're just not educated on how much we need. And I feel like a coach sort of, puts you in the categories of what you need, what your body needs, your age, your body weight, looking at your proportions and what, would be good for you once you sit down and have that conversation on what your goals are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Protein is one of those things that I think so as you mentioned, like when it comes to the calories and stuff, protein and carbs are going to give you the same number of calories per gram.
Hmm.
And so they both give you 4 calories of energy. And of course, if we're given the option, right? Like, who's going to pick protein between
Exactly.
protein and carbs? And
Hmm.
so I think a lot of it, you look back at, like, I always joke about like the slim fast generation and
Yes.
stuff where, like, I remember just growing up, I don't think there was ever a time where there wasn't like the 24 pack from Costco of like slim fast cans or
Hmm.
like having it in there. And, it said right on there, 1,200 calories a day. And like that was the only thing that was important. And so
Hmm.
I think people have more experience with flexible dieting than they usually realize.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
they've been doing this mental math. Like so many, especially women, are dieting from like young ages or being
Yes.
exposed to this kind of stuff
Hmm.
that it makes sense. We end up with like so many different ideas in our head, and we're naturally going to lean towards things that like, oh, I can do that. Like that makes sense
Yes.
to me, right?
Yes.
Protein is one that even as somebody who does this and asks people to eat protein, I hate it so much. It's just not my favorite thing to get
Hmm.
in. And
Hmm.
so I've had to come up with like little tricks and stuff like that along the way. So when you increased your protein intake, did you go from like, did you have to make like a big jump and like, did you have any things that helped you, or did you guys kind of slowly walk that up over time?
I think I was so determined this time. If they would have told me to eat a cow's boot, I have to be honest. I was really determined
I
that
love it.
whatever it is I need to do, up the protein. And I think I had the thought process of, well, what I've been doing hasn't been working. And we know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So I believe my protein goal, I think it was 140, I believe.
Yeah.
I went full force. I went straight to the 140. I, planned it all out. I think learning and incorporating protein bars and the protein shakes,
Mhm.
things of that nature also help because, there was only so much protein that I felt like I was comfortable eating,
Yeah.
through Whole Foods. So where I stopped at my breakfast, lunch, and dinner having, a certain amount of protein, that's when the protein bars and protein shakes came in. And I will admit, those are something that took a while to get used to because a lot of times, we can say, oh, protein bars are chalky or I don't like protein bars, but there's so many different ones out on the market. You have to just keep changing and trying. And that was another thing that I felt like really helped being in the group, being a part of Pro Physique group, the Facebook group. So many people would share different recipes and the protein chips and the Quest bars and the protein powders and how to hack and make different protein, treats. That was like I was able to hit it so easily because, I had help with people showing what they were doing. So,
Yeah. I
mhm,
think,
mhm.
yeah, and that goes back to like some of that stuff that just gets a bad rap in general, where people
Yes,
say like, "Oh, you shouldn't have the protein bars," or
true,
I've
true.
had clients be nervous to have like more than one shake a day, and I'm
Yes.
like, "Oh, girl, like I'd be in so much trouble if I had to limit myself," because you're right, it does get to a point where you just like can't chew that much meat anymore. Like that's
Mhm.
where I get with it, and you can only eat so much Greek yogurt in one day, right?
True. That's
And
true.
so I think it is nice to have protein bars and stuff that you enjoy. Those
Hmm.
Quest chips lately have been a part of my, like, I'm in one of those rhythms where you find like that one good meal and then you just stick
Yes.
with it. So I've been doing, it sounds so weird, but like the canned chicken instead of
Okay.
tuna.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
I mix that with hot sauce
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
crush up the chip and then make a sandwich with that
Yes.
with some grapes.
That's me. That's my taco salad. I do the
Yeah.
same thing with the ground turkey and the chips and just going to the other point of what you mentioned, what are you up to now? I don't know if you know, but I'm actually working with Paul, and I am trying to do my first bikini body contest this year. I didn't say trying. I am. I will be doing this summer, probably in another month, I'll be sculpted and ready. And so that's another thing. I hear people prepping for bikini contests, and they'll say how hard it is, and they'll say how, they think they're done, they won't do another one. And so far it's been, I don't want to say an easy road, but I've been able to do it because of things like the protein chips. And, maybe closer to the end, there may be a point where I just have to pull it out a little bit, but as of now, throughout being on the journey, I've had those things, and it really helps. So that's why I want to encourage people. Don't be afraid to try something that, even if you tried it years ago and you didn't like it, number one, they've made improvements to certain things. And two, sometimes it just takes a matter of time and discipline to get used to it. Something you didn't normally like eating. Like when we were kids, we probably didn't like eating all of our vegetables. But as adults now, some of us, we love some of the same things that we didn't like, as kids. So that was something that I learned as well, and something new that I've been up to.
Yeah, I love that. So are you guys are about 4 to 6 weeks out, like you, and then, oh, yay. Okay, I can't
Yes.
wait. Please make sure Sarah and I have all of the information. I'm gonna like text Paul immediately after this and be like,
Yay.
keep me posted.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
that's amazing. I totally agree. That like finding ways to make it work, whether it's a prep or like just lifestyle in general, it
Mhm.
takes that pressure off yourself, and I think with the way that, there's so much on social media, there's so much on TV, and people get very protective and like divisive over like the food things. And,
Right.
and they can get so worried about trying to incorporate that stuff or mix it up. And I just, more often than not, like if we get more protective or like neurotic about things, we
Hmm.
and if you can find a way to balance it and keep those little daily like hits of
Yeah.
joy, it makes it so much easier, to sit and
It really
eat chicken
does.
and rice if you get your chocolate later.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Right, right. And pushing yourself to do the workout for those who don't like, working out. I feel like most of the people in the pro physique group are ones that enjoy working out, exercise. I'm assuming most of the people who come there do. But then there's others who I think Paul inspires, and just the messages you guys put out on social media to those who don't like exercise and fitness, just trying to motivate others by, showing what you're doing. It really helps to push people, because that's the other part of it too. There's people who, want to do the food part, but maybe they don't want to move too much. And then there's people who do all the exercise and moving, but they don't want to incorporate the nutrition. So I think they go hand in hand. And I think it's really important, for people to, just learn what works, and push yourself through, and do a little bit extra if you can. So it's good.
yeah. I think that's one of those things where having a coach like helps a lot.
Hmm.
And even like if I'm putting myself into something where I know it's going to be hard, I reach out and hire a coach, because
Yeah,
even though I can do this for people all day, like you get emotional about your
yeah,
own things. And then you start to get a little crazy where it's like, I know I would give someone else a rest day, but I'm me and I can do, and then you like push harder, or
yeah.
I should probably drop my macros again, or like you make dumb decisions. And
Right.
so having somebody where you can just hand that off. And then also like the big thing, I think, like you had said, you got to the point where you were like, what I'm doing is not working. I need to be open to like learning more.
Hmm.
Going in with that mindset is such a game changer, because then
Yeah.
it's like question everything. And
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
not for the sake of, but I mean, I always think, but why? But also like in a way where it's like, okay, I just want to super understand this.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're all just like walking science experiments. And so it's
Right.
really figuring out what works, and then letting the coach kind of highlight like, okay, well, this is where maybe we're lacking and like we need to pull up. Because I totally find that people do kind of like they fall in those camps. Either they're like, I want to do all the cardio. I've always been this
Hmm.
person. Give me all of the activity so I can
Yeah.
have all of the food. And
Right.
like, I
Right.
just want all of it. And then there's other people who are like, I want to move as little as humanly possible. And
Mhm.
fine eating nothing. And so, and then you got to like get a bit more creative. But that makes me think a little bit about the podcast we did recently with Coach Adam, where he was doing interviews with people for his dissertation, where they had the client identify a lot of their own behaviors, a lot of their
Mhm.
own trends and stuff, and
Yeah.
then had them a part of the development of things where it was like,
Mhm.
but you said, and I always think that's like a really good sign with like coaching relationships. If like
Yes.
back and forth, it can be
Mhm.
like, all right, remember, like this was the end goal. This is what we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Right. And for me, not only did, so many things grew from me, being in the challenge and having a coach, but it inspired me because like I said, I was someone who always loved fitness. But, just trying to find, the exact spot on where I needed to be and what I wanted to do and, exercise, nutrition. And then, having Stephanie, the way she coached me, I really felt such a connection, and I love the way I was able to go to her because, let's face it, although I won, I had times where she can attest to it. There were times where I was like, should I even submit my last picture?
Right.
Because throughout the journey, sometimes you get stuck. And that's the other great part about having a coach is, when you're not seeing it, maybe it's the scale, maybe it's the pictures. Your coach can look at it from a standpoint where they're looking not as critical as you are. So
Right.
they're seeing the sculpting and they're seeing things. Maybe you feel like your upper body isn't moving, but your lower body is, or vice versa. And
Right.
so that inspired me because so not only did I, gain and learn, I also thought like, okay, now I want to be a coach. So with everything with doing the challenge and winning, I later said, okay, I'm going back, getting my certification, personal trainer, nutrition coach. It was everything that I really wanted. And it just gave me that push. So now I'm doing it and I love it. And, and so I see now when I have my check-ins with Paul, this is so funny. I'll have a splurge weekend and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to do this check-in. And and then I'll say, what would you tell your client, if they had this fear of checking in? We're not the big bad wolf. It's going to be okay. You're going to get that encouragement. Having a coach pushes you, but at the same time, they're not meant to be. At least a coach shouldn't, make you feel so bad about going overboard on the weekend. So that's another thing. A lot of times people are fearful with that, but that was one thing when I decided I wanted to do it. I wanted to have that gentle nudge. I always felt grace when I knew I had to check in with Stephanie. I felt nervous, but she always, assured me it's gonna be okay. Don't worry. It's life. And that's another thing. I think we fail to realize that we'll have a 3-month challenge, and we think we should lose a pound or two a week, every week, consistently with no ups and downs, and it's not always like that. We as females, especially, our bodies have changes, and some days it's up and it's water weight gain, and it's sometimes you have a hard workout, good workout, and it
Yeah.
still goes up. And sometimes we'll tend to freak out, but you just have to, stay calm and realize it's a journey. Just take your time. Don't beat yourself up for those ups and downs. Just let it flow. Give it time.
Exactly. I think of it like long-term investing in the stock market, like with some of that stuff, you just have to like cover your eyes and like
True.
don't watch and just let it do whatever you're doing and just stay
Exactly.
the course. And
Stay the course.
yep.
Stay the course.
And
Exactly.
I think usually when people get more freaked out, that usually means they're like right on the edge of something
True.
happening. And it's
True.
don't spook it.
Exactly. And that's another thing. I remember years ago, this is again me not knowing, not understanding, just you go to the gym, you have these gym memberships, you have these New Year's where you're gonna commit, but you don't know sometimes what you don't know. And I will never forget there was a guy who would say to me, because I guess he could see the determination of me trying to lean out, and he would say, you're this close. You're so close. And I really didn't know what that meant. I was like,
Right.
thank you. Oh, thank you. I felt, so happy that he was telling me you're close. You're almost there. but I didn't know what that meant. So that was me going extra hard at the gym and exercising more and maybe cutting out my food. And I still was in this place of, I'm not there. I'm not there.
Right.
Because I think sometimes we'll think, I just trying to fit into these pants and I just need to lose maybe 5 or 6 pounds. But the reality may be different when you actually get into the journey. So you can be 8 pounds into your goal and you're like, I'm still not where I want to be. I'll just give up instead of, saying, let's just breathe and reevaluate and see where we are, depending on those goals that you have set for yourself. And when he said that, as I was losing more weight, and I was thinking, I'm so close, but why isn't it working? Why don't I have the six pack that I was trying to get? And it was, like I said, when you have that coach, even sometimes you go in stages. I was about 146 when I first did the challenge with prophecy. When I started, um my winning weight was at the time was about, and I know it's not just about the number, but it was somewhere in the 124 range, 120s. And I initially didn't have, everything cut the way I wanted. And that just goes to show that sometimes it goes in stages. And that's where it took me to reaching out to Paul to say, now that I'm here, I want to get to the next step, which was, the bikini competition and the leanness that they have. Now, I know everyone doesn't want that particular look, but that was a goal for me. And just knowing that that comes in stages,
Yeah.
even me entering the challenge 3 times, I learned something every time and I reduced my weight, each time. So sometimes people will want to go from 0 to 60.
Right.
And sometimes it takes stages. Even Stephanie, another good piece of advice, once I was done, I wanted to keep going. And Stephanie told me, as a coach, she told me, and I didn't know this at the time. She said, you may also need a break. You need some time to rest. As long as you were doing the cut, you may need to take, if not all of that same amount of time, but a certain amount of time to, maintain and just be at. And I thought, I'm so close. I'm just right here.
Yeah.
All it would take is maybe 4 more pounds to get there. And I didn't, I took a break and I, started doing it on my own. But I didn't take a break, with what I was trying to do. And I was trying and not getting any success, trying and not getting into any success. And months later, I realized Stephanie was right. I needed a break.
Right.
I needed to take a mental break.
Yeah.
I kept exercising. I was still into the fitness, but I needed to take a pause from trying to lose, the cut. And so I took a little bit of a break. I gained a few pounds, and in that time, I was still exercising. So hopefully, I did like a small bulk of, building muscle. So by the time I reached out to Paul at the beginning of this year, I stayed so close to with my range, and that's what I love about Pro Physique. It's not the biggest loser. It's not lose all this weight really fast and then put it back on. I've made sustainable habits of, watching what I eat, increasing the protein, monitoring my steps. I didn't used to wear a step counter
Right.
a watch because I thought I'm the gym rat. I exercise like crazy. It doesn't matter how many steps I do. I know I go so hard in the gym, it doesn't matter, but it did matter because at times when you need to increase, you need to know where did you start and where do you need to go from here. So I thought that was, really important that I took, steps to take a break and then get back into it. But I pretty much sustained within about maybe 4 pounds from the where I ended the challenge. I probably, almost a year later,
Yeah.
really stayed about that, increased here and there, definitely with the holidays.
Right.
But I definitely didn't go right back up to that 140. So when it became to go to my next phase, I didn't have, a lot of, to work off because I, gained all that weight back, 20 pounds back, so I was really happy about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's what I was going to ask about was like there had to have been a reverse or some sort of break like in there. And I love that you shared like some numbers with it because I think a lot of the times, people don't realize that when we do have to back out of it, like it does make sense that you're going to add a little bit back.
Right.
We try to make it not be too much.
Hmm.
But that's such a wonderful example of losing about 20 pounds, right? And
Yes.
then seeing a fluctuation within about four. I mean, that's amazing. So about
Yeah.
20%, that we see come and go. And I think that you mentioned like the holidays and stuff is so important too, because it's like bringing ourselves back to that like law of averages with stuff
Yeah.
where life is not going to be exactly the same every day. It's
Hmm.
definitely not the same month to month. And so expecting our body to try and be, super stuck and like compliant at this one spot. Like, oh, I mean, I would love that level of control in my life,
Hmm.
but it's one that you kind of have to be like, I'm doing the best I can. I am, I've got everything on lock that I know that I need to, and then you kind of just
Hmm.
gotta let it be. Um, and I think that, at least helps with the mental side of things a lot because that time in between cuts, especially after you've recently had such good success with
Yeah.
lifting, can
Hmm.
be so difficult on the mindset because you're,
Yes.
oh man, like, did I do the wrong thing and stuff like
Right.
that?
And it was. I will admit, mentally, even the sad part, I think that's the part where you have to ground yourself because it would be, that I went up again. I feel like we finished the challenge somewhere in the summertime because I'm trying to think that was the New Year's when we started and then it was warm. By the time the end of the year happened and you have the holidays, you do go up. And for me, it was like I said, 4 or 5 pounds. And I remember feeling so stressed and frustrated with myself about it. And then I had to say, wait a minute, the weight that you are now, 2 years ago, you wouldn't even imagine you would be at this weight, you know, and the voice in my head realizing that Stephanie was telling me that I needed that break, it really let me know that, these 4 or 5 pounds are really not that bad, in hindsight of, the 20 pounds that I lost. And not to mention the fact that some of it could be muscle because I was still working out and still lifting really heavy. So a lot of it's muscle. I think then the next phase, I will admit, it took me a while to get in gear, even though it was, 4 or 5 pounds, just a small amount. It took me a while because I will admit, once I got into maintenance felt really good.
Yeah, right.
It felt really good. So there was some time with Paul this year with check-in. It was like week after week, the number was staying the same.
Right.
And it was like, okay, we're not in maintenance anymore. Now it's time to get back into gear. So that's another thing I just want to say for people who are in the transformation challenge. Just understand it just sometimes it takes time to mentally get there. Like with me, like we were talking about the protein, hating it or loving it.
Yeah.
There are some things that you're like, I'm determined. I'm going to eat whatever I need to eat to do it. And then there's other things that you have to give up that may be a little difficult and they're not as easy to give up, or more steps that you need to take, but life is happening and you can't get to those steps. So just understanding that to give yourself the patience. If you don't get it this time around, next time around, it will be there. Don't be afraid to sign up more than once because it's a great group, of the people, and it's like-minded individuals. Because some of my obsessiveness when it comes to the way I jot down food and, calculate calories or sitting at the dinner table and on my Lose It app,
Right.
probably drive my family crazy. But that's one of the things I really love about the Transformation Challenge and Pro Physique is you have other people who think like you and
Yeah.
have that tiny bit of obsession like you.
Yeah.
So that's really key. It's really sweet.
Someone will match your crazy for sure. Like no matter what it is, you can put it out there and there's going to be someone else that's like, "Yep, I've done that."
Like whether you're excited about getting a Ninja Creamy
Oh my God.
for your birthday or Christmas, or my husband got me protein bars for Mother's Day, and I was like so excited. Like boxes of protein bars for Valentine's Day. It's like, all right, just speaking my language. Years ago, I got a scale on a holiday. I can't remember what it was. And this guy at the gym said, if I bought my wife a scale, she would put me out the house.
Yeah, you're like, you got to read the room on that one and make sure she wanted it.
Everyone, don't try this at home.
Yeah.
That's not your wife's.
Proceed with
Uh,
caution unless she's on our crazy vibes.
exactly, exactly.
I love that. Oh, there's so much good in there. I want to make sure we got the time to cover all of this stuff. And you've dropped so many good little nuggets with all of that. I'm like losing it right now because my Facebook has been hacked
Oh,
and I'm locked out of Facebook entirely. And of course, it
no.
being the last week of the challenge, I don't get to have any of the fun in the group while
Oh,
everyone's sharing
no.
everything. And so I'm hoping I get in there very shortly, and figure out what all of this is because that's always been my favorite part. Like
Mhm.
it's just so supportive. There is always somebody there who understands what somebody is saying, or,
Yeah.
it's always the ones that really get me is when someone tries to quit and they go in there and they're super confident that they're quitting and they post about it and then they
Everyone,
defend.
no, don't give up. You can do it. Stay with it.
They're like, no. And the thing is, getting to talk to people who want to do guided coaching and stuff, and then I get a lot of the questions sent in and everything. Like, there's a lot of really competitive people who do
Mhm.
these challenges too,
Yeah.
where they're like, oh no, I'm going to win, like when they join. But then it doesn't come across that way in the group.
Right.
It's not like people are like, well, I can't tell you what I'm doing or anything like that. It's always still so supportive. And so that blows me away, like the two different versions where like in my email, they're like, oh, I'm gonna kick everyone's butt. And then they're like, oh, please don't quit. Have you tried this?
Right. Exactly. That's so true. And that's again going back to what I love. Some of my favorite treats and things that I've learned to date came from people who I was competing with. I literally was competing with these people and they're giving advice, they're giving recipes, they're giving encouragement, and so I thought that was amazing. That was really a great aspect of it because I'm so thankful every time I'm eating certain things that I didn't know about. I mean, there's Instagram now, and so many people put those things out. But at the time when I first joined, I didn't know about it, and it's all
Yeah.
about the algorithm. So, maybe the things on Instagram I'm seeing because I started, buying those things and consuming, and
Right.
maybe about it myself. So, yeah, it's a great group. And the staff, I feel like the interviews
Mhm.
that you guys do with the other coaches that would come on and any like the Q&As,
Yeah.
those are always good too. Those are really good.
Yep, those are super fun. And we get I love that there's always new questions that I've never gotten before where
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I don't know. I've never thought about that, like
Right.
with situations. So
Yeah.
it's super fun. Well, you're gonna have to keep us posted on everything with your show. So I'll start bugging Paul about it each week and be like, let me know. That way I have it for sure.
Yay,
Um,
will do.
and then if I can like drop your Instagram handle on the YouTube, and then that way if anybody wants to follow you and kind of keep
Yay.
up with your journey, we'll have that there. And if you guys have any questions for us, same old, just drop them in the comments and I will be in there. This is going to come out, let's see, so it's we're in mid-May. So the tickets for the next challenge will be live when this podcast goes out. And so shorter challenge this time than the one we just finished. It's one of these 8-week ones. But I think that's kind of good mentally, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like, let's just get through it. It's not too long. We figured out like the mental feelings around like 60 days and 8 weeks. And it's such a
Mhm.
good one because like neither one feels too scary. So yeah, super excited. If you guys need me, let you know and or let me know and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much.